Today I want to share with you a knife that I think is probably my favorite knife that Ernie's ever produced. And that is this Bumblebee Pretac knife. And I don't think it has any kind of official name, but collectors have called it the Bumblebee because of its obvious black and gold color combination. So this is an early knife. I mentioned that Pretac before, and that's simply a time before Ernie was making a time before he was making tactical knives, and so it's been termed Pretac. And at that time period, he was making a lot more dress knives, gentlemen's knives, and they all had that Emerson Half Moon logo that you see right there. That kind of dates it to the late 80s, perhaps the early 90s in terms of the year it was produced. The thumbstead's also interesting. It has kind of grooves cut into it and is also gold anodized, although I don't think it's going to be easy for you to tell through this camera. While we're here, we can also see that the blade has a hand-rubbed kind of a satin finish on it, and is also hollow ground, which is not unusual for the time period, but certainly not something that Emerson has been famous for since then. Moving down the knife, we'll take a look at the pivot. So this is the back side of the pivot, which is actually the side that has the screw on it. And then the front side of the pivot has this interesting pattern. It's a 3D type pattern. You can see that there's like valleys and peaks, and it's a very interesting look, almost like a honeycomb type of appearance. And then there are titanium bolsters, which are polished and have there's the scallop right there in the center, as well as different striations, cuts in the titanium on both sides, which give it an interesting look. And then those lines go all the way down into the black micarta. And there's actually these cutouts here in the micarta so that you can see straight through to the gold anodized titanium liners. And there's also a little more detail. So you can see that there's swirls here, almost like a jeweling of the liners, if you will. Give it an little bit extra detail, a little more difficult, I suppose, a little more work to produce this type of knife. It's a very handsome knife, and there's actually more than one of them. This is one of two that I know of, and perhaps there's more out there. The other one has a little bit different sizing of these grooves in the micarta. And there's actually a photo of Ernie holding this knife in his shop, a current photo, a recent photo. And behind Ernie in the photo is an image of the other Bumblebee knife. And like I said, that the grooves are they're of even length throughout the entire knife, or certainly closer. This is obviously smaller than this piece here, than that hole there, but the other knife, all the holes are very close to the same size. And then it looks like this is the only piece of titanium that's not anodized, the back spacer. Overall, it's just a very handsome knife. It's one that I never thought I'd ever see or handle in person, and luckily I was able to get that chance when a friend of mine recently bought this knife. So there is another one in existence. I just mentioned that, and another collector who I know also owns that knife. It is just really neat, and you can even see in the lock bar where it's been jeweled and buffed with those swirl buff marks. It's just a really handsome knife, and like I said, it's a privilege to handle this one. This is a knife I've really been interested in for years now. I've seen pictures of it. It's been around, like I said, for decades, so there's lots of pictures of it, but holding it is something special, that's for sure. And let's see if it's centered. If it's not centered, then I could just give it a little pivot adjustment. But it looks centered to me. Yeah, it's just one of these knives that I could just hold and look at for hours. It's just so impressive, the amount of work that went into it. And interestingly, this is really the shape that goes on to become the Viper 1 or the MV1 model. And I really like it. It's just very elegant, has these nice simple lines that are very timeless. Makes it easily my favorite Emerson that Ernie's ever made. So I guess I'll end it here. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I'll try to answer them the best I can. And if there's any particular images you want to see of this knife, let me know. I can try to take those pictures. Give you one last look at the knife. A nice swedge there. Comes down to meet the primary grind on both sides. Alright, thanks again for watching. As always, be dressed to play and geared to slaughter. See ya.